Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Center Presents. Before we start tonight, I just want to let you know that we're very excited. In 2 weeks, we're going to have a live program. It'll be held outside at South Cove, and it is called Interactive Traditional African Drumming. And Theo Marty will be here, who is a master percussionist. He grew up in Ghana, and he's bringing all his African drums, and he is going to play for like 20 minutes and sing, and then he's going to invite the audience to participate. And that's on June 16th, so that should be a fun night. Right now, we're very happy. The Center Presents is very happy to be introducing tonight's program, which is entitled Are You LakeSmart? Our featured speaker is Andrea Lamaro from New Hampshire Lakes. She is the president of New Hampshire Lakes, and she will be speaking tonight about you don't have to live on a lake. You can be a mile away or more and still have an impact on the lake, your property. So she's going to be talking about that. Andrea has a Bachelor of Science degree in environmental science and policy, and that is from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And then she has a master's degree from Duke, and that is environmental management, I think, and water resources. I hope that's correct.
You got it.
And so she has a lot of background to be talking to us. So right now, I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Lamaro. It's all yours.
Thank you. Well, let me try to share my screen here.
Andrea, excuse me, one thing.
Go ahead.
If you have questions, Andrea said just to put your name in the chat and she will call on you if you have a question. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me here. And thank you for joining in. I know it's a beautiful evening out there. So thank you for spending some of your time here with me this evening. And I see a lot of familiar faces out there. So hi, nice to see you again. And some new folks too. I hope to meet you sometime in person. So really nice to see you all. I'm sorry I can't see you, in person, face to face now, but soon. So what I wanted to do is talk about how folks in your community can live in a lake-friendly way. How I want to introduce the LakeSmart program to you, and also introduce or reintroduce you to New Hampshire Lakes, the organization that I've been working with, since 2007. And I know we have a number of folks in the audience who are our supporters of New Hampshire Lakes, and thank you for that. And your organization supports us as well. So thank you so much. Your generosity and your dedication to clean and healthy lakes makes what we do for you and with you and for the lakes that you love possible. So thank you. Yeah, so I'd like to, I'll present some information and then I'll stop and see if anyone has any questions. Keep this kind of informal. And I know I am probably speaking to the choir here, but New Hampshire is home to some of the cleanest and healthiest lakes in the country. Clean and healthy lakes are good for us, right? Especially this past year. We saw a lot of people coming to New Hampshire, spending time in New Hampshire on our lakes to get spread out, get some fresh air. We know that being on the water, around the water, in the water, it's good for our soul, it's good for our mental health, good for our economy, good for the environment. All around, lakes are good for us. And I know that you know this, and this is why you're here today, the health and enjoyment of our lakes here in New Hampshire, including your favorite lake, is threatened. And those threats include invasive species. So, plants and animals that have hitchhiked, to our waters that aren't supposed to be here. I know probably most of you out here are familiar with the plant milfoil. Thankfully, knock on wood, there is no milfoil in your lake that we know of. But thank you for all that your group does to participate in the Lake Host program, that courtesy boat inspection program, which helps protect your lake from invasive species hitchhiking into the lake. And I think it's super important that you guys are doing this program. As you know, you're fairly close to Vermont, and there are some lakes in Vermont that have some pretty nasty plants in there. And you guys at Eastman have done a good job, putting up that line of defense. The health and enjoyment of our lakes is threatened by polluted runoff water coming off the landscape. This here is a picture in early spring, obviously after a spring rain that washed, the picture in the middle here, that washed a bunch of sediment off the landscape. That sediment probably contains the nutrient phosphorus. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with phosphorus. Phosphorus makes plants and algae grow, but too much of phosphorus is a bad thing. So we want to limit the amount of phosphorus getting into our lakes, that's getting into your lake, because it'll make the plants and the plants and the algae, grow more than is healthy. Our lakes are threatened by changing weather patterns. So here in New Hampshire, we are experiencing generally the same amount of rain, maybe a little bit more than we've experienced over the past couple of decades, but we're getting that rain in fewer but more intense or bigger storms. So that's creating a situation where we're having more polluted runoff flowing off of the landscape at one time, and it's a bigger event. It's got more power. It's washing more sediment and nutrients into the water than maybe in the past. So those are some of the threats that are facing our lakes, including your lake. And I know, again, preaching to the choir, why you are all here today, it would be pretty crazy if we just thought, hey, no big deal, the lake's it's a big body of water, it's totally fine, it'll take care of itself. That would be pretty crazy if we thought that. So that's why New Hampshire Lakes exists, and I know that's also why you guys and your committee, exist. We are a statewide nonprofit organization, essentially working for clean and healthy lakes for all of our 1,000 lakes in New Hampshire. Our mission, really simply put, is to keep lakes clean and healthy. This is my daughter several years ago on Lake Massasecum in Bradford, New Hampshire, so just not too far south from you guys. So New Hampshire Lakes, we work with local groups like your group. We work with state representatives. We work with individuals to develop programs, on-the-ground programs, and also policies, through our state legislature, essentially to inspire action, to inspire people who live near our lakes, who live in our watersheds, that recreate on our lakes, inspire people to take action to help them keep the lakes that they're enjoying and that they're loving clean and healthy. Our programs, and I was just talking to Sue about this before we started this evening. One of our primary programs is our advocacy program. So working in the state legislature with all of our state representatives, again, to help influence, initiate laws and rules and policies to help keep our lakes clean and healthy. So that's sort of a top-down approach, but we also work from a ground-up approach. And as I keep saying, on-the-ground conservation programs. This here, of course, is a picture of a lake host meeting. That lake host is going to meet and greet a boater and talk to that boater, hopefully inspire that boater to take simple actions to keep out invasive species. The reason we're here this evening is you guys want to learn more about the LakeSmart program, how to live lake-friendly on the landscape. And we do outreach, and in a normal summer, We are out and about in the community at family-friendly events, helping playing games and doing activities with kids and their parents, so people can maybe learn a little bit about lakes and get interested in the ecology. And we have worked in your community with youth on the Lake Appreciation Week, doing outreach. And this here is our Watershed Warrior program, which Sue has worked with us very closely on over the years. So that's just a real quick introduction to this statewide organization. We've been around for over 20 years now. Does anyone have any quick questions about who we are or what we do? And you're welcome to quickly unmute yourself or type something into the chat. Unmute. Okay. I'm somehow muted myself. All right. Well, I will, if no one has any questions, I'll continue on and I'll stop again in a few minutes. So this here is a picture of Crystal Lake, actually not very far from you guys. Some of you may know Shirley Green. She's lives on Crystal Lake, and she's a board member with us. She's been a board member for many years, and I know she's been involved in activities at Eastman as well. But anyway, so a few years ago, when we asked our supporters and our partners, hey, if New Hampshire Lakes continues what we're doing, will our lakes be cleaner and healthier in 25 years, from now, healthier than they are today? So kind of a tough question, but we kind of wanted to do a check-in. And what we heard is, no, hey, New Hampshire Lakes, you guys are doing a great job, but you know what, more needs to be done. More needs to be done to reduce that polluted runoff water coming off the landscape, and more needs to be done to encourage a culture of lake-friendly living. As I said, our lakes are under threat, and this here is a picture. If you can read it here, it's a advisory sign posted by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services at a water body, and the sign says, hey, there are high levels of potentially toxic cyanobacteria in this water. We are seeing cyanobacteria, so basically toxic bacteria, advisories being posted at our lakes more and more often. In fact, today was a really bad day for cyanobacteria advisories. There were 4 lakes in New Hampshire today that received these advisories. Unfortunately, the conditions came together over the past couple of days. So remember, it rained pretty hard over the weekend, washed in probably a whole bunch of nutrients into our lakes, and now it's the sun's coming out and it's kind of warm out. So that creates a really good or bad, depending on your perspective, situation in which cyanobacteria, this toxic bacteria, can bloom. So just a sort of a public service announcement, do keep an eye out on the water before you jump in. If you go down to the water and you see that it looks an unusual color, maybe turquoise or pea soup, you're going to want to say, hey, I need to reach out to DES and have them take a look at this, Department of Environmental Services. But getting back to my main point, so, we were told by our partners, our supporters, our friends, New Hampshire Lakes, you need to do more. Can you do more to help protect, the lakes that we all love and that are so very important, to our state and to our way of life? So, to encourage a culture of lake-friendly living. So before we really delve any further, what is lake-friendly living? Now, maybe we can nod our heads here. Do we think lake-friendly living, the picture on the left is an example of lake-friendly living? I see people shaking their heads. Probably not. We're not against lawns. We can have our lawns and have a lake, a healthy lake, but this lawn here is probably more than they need. They probably also have sort of a paved driveway here that, the water just runs across the driveway, across the lawn and into the water. And Not a lot of good wildlife habitat here either. So the picture on the right is probably more what we think about when we talk about lake-friendly living. We have a home there, but we have a nice vegetated buffer between the home and the water. And lots of nice wildlife habitat there, birds and insects and little critters. Some vegetation to sort of soak up any runoff coming down off the landscape. Those trees are helping to shade the water, to keep the water cooler for our, fish friends. And so, that's definitely what we're thinking about when we think about lake-friendly living, is something more that looks like on the right side of the screen here. However, we're not sure, maybe this home, who knows what their septic system's like. So there are lots of aspects to lake-friendly living, in addition to having, really nice vegetated strip between, your home and the water. The other thing I like to say about lake-friendly living is, it's good for the lake, but it's also good for the property owner. The trees here help to provide some shade to the property, keep the house cooler. These trees hopefully provide some wind protection from the water to the home. So lake-friendly living is not only good for the water and the critters, but it's also good for us. This type of living will also help keep the lake clean and help that owner protect, their investment in their property along this lake. So let's see, what do we have next? So really what it boils down to in simple terms is lake-friendly living is living in a way that minimizes your contribution to lake aging. So lake aging, that might be a new topic or a new term for some of you. Just like people, lakes age over time, hopefully much longer time frame, thousands, tens of thousands of years. Over time, lakes naturally fill in with decayed plants and leaves and algae and sediment. But human activities, so things we do, in the water, along the water, in the watershed, so the drainage area will speed up how quick the lake ages and also bring in pollutants. And, as we said in the introduction, whether you live right next to the lake or you live, up the hill, up the watershed, what you do in your property, in your home, on your property, eventually is going to impact the lake. Hopefully in a good way, but often inadvertently, we're impacting or affecting the lakes that we love in a negative way. And often we just don't even know about it. Again, probably preaching to the choir here, but when naturally the landscape in New Hampshire was vegetated, trees, and as we come in, we are manipulating that landscape. So taking away the natural trees and natural vegetation, that natural sponginess, right, that can soak up the water, and we're replacing it with hard things that can't soak up water, like the roofs of our houses, our roads, and our driveways. So this is all making more polluted runoff. So, rain and snow melt, can't sink into the ground. So they run off, the surface, picking up pollution, and every little bit. So, the little bit at Sue's house and the little bit at my house and the little bit at Robert's house, eventually, gets into the lake and creates a big problem. So I've been working in lakes in New Hampshire since 2001. And I am pleased, I have found that most people really just aren't aware of how their activities contribute to lake aging. I've also thankfully found that most people want to help keep the lakes that they live near, the lakes that they recreate on, the lakes that are so important to the community. Most people want to take action to keep them clean and healthy. So in a couple years ago, we launched the LakeSmart Lake Friendly Living Program. And this is a program that has been run in Maine for 20 years and has received national recognition, and they've done a whole lot of good work up there. And I just wanted to shout out to our friends in Maine. They said, yes, come take a look at our program. Here's all of our material, you know, adapt it for New Hampshire. So we're still adapting and tweaking it, but we're super excited to have a jump start. So before I really get into what LakeSmart is, does anyone have any questions on what I've covered thus far? You know, lake ecology related, pollutant related, and feel free to type in the chat box or unmute yourself if you have the power.
Andrea?
Yes, Sue.
I just wanted to ask and have confirmed that when you have a smaller lake, the concern about sedimentation and runoff is even more serious than it is in a larger lake. If that's true, is it not?
That is a great question. And I would say, yes, you know, the smaller the water body you have, you know, the less dilution you have, right? And the less storage space you have. You know, conversely, I will say, you know, once a relatively bigger lake, you know, gets really degraded, it's going to be a lot harder and more expensive to, you know, bring it back to a less degraded state than it would be with a smaller, shallower lake. With that said, it's not easy, nor is it inexpensive to bring a shallower, smaller lake, you know, back to a better state of health either. So I would say, you know, yes, with a smaller, more shallow lake, you know, you're going to see, you know, in your community, you know, effects faster than you would see them at, say, Lake Sunapee or, you know, a bigger water body. And all right, it looks like Paul, you have a question about climate change. Feel free to unmute yourself if you're able.
Yes, you mentioned that our rains will be less frequent, but more intense. And maybe after all is said and done, we'll be receiving a similar amount of water. But how might that affect the forests that are also protecting the lakes?
Great question. So I think, you know, climate change is not my area of expertise, but what I do know is that, you know, if we're getting more bigger storms, we're having more periods of flooding and more periods of drought. And so I would say, you know, drought is concerning because, you know, the soils are drier. It may be more, it may affect the health of our forests, and also, you know, makes us more susceptible to forest fires. And so, you know, we don't want, you know, our forests to go away. I know forest fire is part of, you know, natural thing, but, you know, that's, I would say the change, you know, too much rain at one point, and then the drought is going to weaken our forests, you know, abilities to be resilient. And then potentially, you know, when you have reduced resiliency, you may be the trees may be more susceptible to disease or, you know, invasive species. So yeah, I think that's definitely a concern. And I think you're pointing out that it's super important that we have forests, you know, around our lakes and in our watersheds, you know, for habitat and for holding soil in place and for soaking up water. So we do want to do what we can to keep our forests there and also to keep them healthy. Great question. Anyone else have any ecology related questions? All right, well, I will motor on here, but again, stop in a few minutes again. So the LakeSmart program, and I'm sure you guys may have a general idea. LakeSmart is an education, evaluation, and recognition program that helps property owners take action to live in a lake-friendly way. It's free, voluntary, and non-regulatory, meaning that, we will provide outreach and visits and, guidance at no cost. We won't be doing shovels in the ground projects with you, but we'll be helping property owners figure out, what they can do, in their home, around their home, along the water to be lake friendly. I always need to assure people that no one is going to get in trouble by participating in LakeSmart. So sometimes we may be doing things on our property which are technically, no-nos and possibly not allowed by law. I found that most people, when I go to their home, and maybe they have something going on that's, maybe not allowed, they usually just don't know. And I am not going to, write them up and turn them into the Department of Environmental Services. So I just want everyone, I always reassure people that this is a safe program. We don't share our data, in that way with any regulatory agency. So LakeSmart, it helps keep our lakes clean and healthy. It helps protect wildlife. I say, providing for healthy wildlife is really, one of the primary goals of this program. It helps protect your lakeside investment. You may have seen studies out there that show when lakes become degraded, property values decrease. And while you say, oh, that might be great, my taxes will go down. Doesn't really work like that. So, and having clean and healthy lakes, helps support local businesses and the local economy. So this program helps, kind of a triple bottom line here of helping the lake, helping the property owner, and helping the community. So the real goal of this program, and they have seen this in Maine after, several years. Again, I mentioned they've done this program in Maine for over 20 years now. This program creates a conservation ethic across lake communities. So basically it creates a trend. The social scientists tell us that once approximately 15% of a population, adopts an action, that sets a trend, and then others will follow. So, what we've been doing these past couple of summers, and we'll be, looking for this summer and next summer, is for early adopters, folks like you guys, to go out, do the survey, hopefully find out your LakeSmart, and then get recognized for it so that your friends and your neighbors start to see it and they say, hey, that's pretty cool. How did Sue get that sign on her property? I want to find out about like that. I want to be like her. So that's what they've seen in Maine. It takes it takes some years to sort of build up the momentum, and that's where we are right now. But we want our properties around our lakes to look more like the picture on the right rather than the left here. So we do also have a sign that we provide to communities who sort of want to promote this program. And the sign in the middle is a sign that says, hey, if you see this LakeSmart award sign around your watershed, it means, these people are doing things that are lake friendly. If you want to find out more, go to this place to find out more. So again, all part of, I mentioned it's a recognition program, recognizing what lake friendly living looks like, and providing people with information to how to find out more, so how they can look like that too. So how does an individual property owner participate? And we kind of say, everyone has their own LakeSmart, lake-friendly living journey. All LakeSmart journeys begin with an online self-assessment from the comfort and safety of your own home. And you go to our website and you can click on the link and it'll guide you through this online assessment. If you've done the online assessment already, thank you. If you haven't done it yet, I'd wait a week or two because it's going to get a nice update pretty quickly, and it's going to be a little bit more user-friendly. But through this self-assessment, you get a pretty good idea right off the bat if you're close to being LakeSmart, or if you've got some opportunities to become more LakeSmart. So then, when a property owner thinks that they're pretty close to being LakeSmart, you can invite a trained LakeSmart evaluator to come out and see your property. And eventually we hope to work with your group so that local volunteers from your community can be trained to do these site assessments. It's best and it's most fun to learn from your friends and neighbors, not some person from Concord that you don't know very well. But we have visited a handful of sites in your community, by the way, and our team loved doing it. And I hear that it got some good feedback. So thank you. So when a property owner thinks they're pretty close to being LakeSmart, we come out and do an evaluation, or the local group comes and does an evaluation. But I do want to say, in New Hampshire, some people really like to be private and respect their privacy. And we've had a few folks who say, hey, I'd really rather not have someone come to my property, but can I send in some pictures? So sure, we do try to do photo evaluations, but as you can imagine, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what's going on from a photo. So we have to ask for some pretty specific photos. And sometimes it takes a little while to really figure out what's going on. So the property evaluation. So what I really want to point out is lake-friendly living is year-round. You may be at your property, only seasonally, but being lake-friendly is year-round. And it's things that you do in your home, around your home, along the water. And this isn't just for shorefront properties. If you're up in the watershed, this applies to you as well. So your actions and your practices on a year-round basis are compared to some standards of excellence that we've developed for the program, through our observations and through the work of our partners in Maine over the years. And here's where you get to start thinking about if you think you're LakeSmart. So before I continue, any questions to this point? All right. Paul, looks like you have another question. Go for it.
Are funds available for perhaps extending your reach via New Hampshire Extension to help with property assessment?
That's a great question. It's not something I've looked into, in the past year or two, but I do know, prior to that, when we were first envisioning this program, that there were not funds to help support that. But, I would like to find out. We are trying to think creatively of how we can get more people out in the field, because obviously my team, I have 3 people who can, 4 or 5 people that can go out, but eventually I'm hoping that, we have thousands of people, right, that are looking for these assessments. So I think really the key is also going to be to get local groups that already have this volunteer network of volunteers that are looking for maybe a new opportunity or new challenge to participate in this program. And this is sort of my pie in the sky idea to help fund this program, but I'm also hoping that we can do some sort of workforce development program in the future and actually provide people with lake conservation jobs and having this be part of, a job skills training program. And that's not a very well fleshed out idea, but just say that I'm keeping my eyes open. Those are usually bigger federal type grant programs. But that is on our radar because I do, having done lake work in New Hampshire over the past 20 years, you have a wonderfully active community that really values volunteerism, but I do see volunteerism in general decreasing around the states. And so I know that we can't, in all communities, rely on volunteers to step in and run this program locally. So sorry, Paul, that was a really long-winded answer, but I appreciate your creative thinking, and that is something that I will keep on my radar. All right. So here's the point. I'm going to introduce some of the standards of excellence, and you can start to think, if you're property is LakeSmart or maybe not. So we generally look at 4 sections on a property. If we're looking at an island property, usually we're not looking at a driveway or a parking area, but some standards of excellence for our driveways and parking areas is that we know we need areas to park our cars, but sometimes I get to a property and there's just like parking everywhere and, you know, little roads here and there. And, you know, we want to minimize those hard compacted surfaces, right? Because we want, we're looking for that sponginess, that, again, for the water to soak in. So, you know, occasionally, often I'll get to a property and we'll talk about, hey, do you really need all this driveway? Or, you know, oh, you don't. Okay, maybe we can convert some of this into, you know, more vegetation, or, oh, you just need overflow parking sometimes. So, you know, we can work on that. Another key principle is making sure that we divert water off of our driveways and our parking areas into an area where it can soak into the ground, you know, soak into vegetation and get soaked up and cleaned up, rather than allowing the water to funnel off of our roads, picking up speed and dirt and pollution on the way into the lake. What else? Oh, this is a big one here in New Hampshire. Hold on, I just muted myself. So, you know, we need to maintain our driveways and walkways and parking areas during the winter, so for safety. And so a standard of excellence is to minimize the amount of de-icing, so salt and sand that we use, you know, and sweep it up, you know, after the snowstorm or after the rainstorm. One of the things, I think it's on the next slide here. No, but we're encouraging communities to have, you know, roadway crews trained as Green Snow Pro certified. And I know that's one of the recommendations for your community, or maybe they already are actually trained in Green Snow Pro. So they're, you know, maintaining safe passage, but learning how to use less, you know, pollutants, less sand and less salt on our roadways and walkways. So yeah, so lake-friendly living is minimizing your driveway and parking areas. It's diverting water off of these hard surfaces, you know, to where it can soak into the ground nearby, rather than speeding up and funneling down and eroding soils. And, you know, during winter, cleaning up using less snow removal products and then sweeping them up at the end of the season. Another section we look at is your structures and your on-site wastewater treatment system, if you have an on-site wastewater treatment system. And some of the standards of excellence are, if you do have a septic system or something similar, that you, I laugh, but I shouldn't laugh, that you know where it is and you know a maintenance plan for it, and you actually have it maintained by a licensed professional on a regular basis. Sometimes people say to me, well, how often should my septic system be pumped? And I say, it depends. It really depends on what kind of system you have, you know, how big it is, how many people are using it, how often it's used. So we really encourage you to work with a professional, licensed professional, to figure out what your system needs. I can't tell you the number of properties I've gone to that, you know, I'm thinking, oh, this property is going to be LakeSmart. It's going to be LakeSmart. It's looking so good. And then I ask them about their septic system and they're like, what? Oh yeah, the leach field, it's over there. And like, I look and it's this forest. I'm like, oh no. So they've clearly, you know, not become friends with their septic system, and they don't understand what their septic system needs. And we look at the structures. Oh, here in the middle, salts. So, you know, we talked about salt on the roadways. You know, sometimes in certain pockets in New Hampshire, you know, communities need to use water softeners. And I believe that Eastman may be one of those areas where some people are using water softeners, and we encourage the use of salt-free water softeners, because again, flushing salt into our groundwater eventually seeps into our lakes, and our lakes are not meant to be saltwater systems. And we are seeing, and I know Eastman, in your community, we're seeing increasing conductivity levels, and that is not good, because, you know, again, these are meant to be freshwater systems, and increasing conductivity is going to stress those aquatic organisms in our waters. Not good for wildlife habitat. In structures, so we look at what is the relationship of rain runoff and snow melt to your structure. Is it coming off of the roof and soaking into the ground, or is it coming off the roof, funneling down the hill, eroding away, washing away soil and into the water? So we want that water to come off to the roof and soak into the ground, maybe through, in this picture here on the right, that's called a dripline infiltration trench. So bunch of crushed stone. And I know the activity center there at South Cove, we helped install some, several summers ago, helped install some stone infiltration areas to help that huge volume of water that comes off that roof soak, give it a chance to soak into the ground before it runs down that steep hill and into the lake. So another section, your yard recreation areas and footpaths, and just some general principles here, standards of excellence. I said earlier, we're not against lawns. We just think that, for lake-friendly living, a standard is to minimize your lawn. So, have lawn where you're going to use it. Sometimes, again, I get to a property and it's just this beautiful lush green lawn that goes all the way down to the lake. And I'm like, hey, do you guys need all this lawn? Do you use all this lawn? And not always, but often the property owner will say, no, I don't use all this lawn, and it's a real pain. I have to mow it all the time. So, we talk to property owners about, stopping mowing, letting that lawn revert to a meadow. And eventually, after a couple of summers, it actually looks kind of attractive. Excuse me, and much better at soaking up runoff and providing for wildlife habitat. Another standard of excellence is not using fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides. Just saying, okay, I don't need these. And the use of those, as you probably know, they are regulated by state law. Another standard of excellence is minimizing the number of and size of your footpaths. But it's super important to have footpaths because you want to direct people to where you want them to use the property. It's sort of like when we go hiking, right? They say, stay on the path, don't deviate from the path. We want to concentrate that use in one area so we can let the other parts of the property, again, stay nice and squishy and soak up the water. And another key thing is we want to, along with the path idea, we want to let people know, hey, hang out here, sit here and have your evening drinks and cocktails. We want to direct people to where to use the property, again, so that we let the rest of the property remain more in a natural state. Excuse me. So then if you have a shoreline, we encourage that healthy and diverse area of vegetation. That's a standard of excellence. Here on the left, sort of the last line of defense to keep runoff out of the lake. This picture here in the middle is a walkway, helping. This is called actually an infiltration steps. This is from Mascoma Lake, so just not too far from you. These steps are crushed stone. They help to soak up rainwater instead of letting it funnel down that hill and into the lake. And this is kind of a silly but easy one. We all probably have a whole bunch of canoes and kayaks, or at least my family does. My family has a home on Sunapee. And a simple lake-friendly living thing is to store those canoes and kayaks up on a rack. So they're not covering up the ground so that, when it rains, the water can soak into the ground. And they're also not compacting the ground. Each time we move that thing in and out, we're making the, hardening the ground so it's not soaking up water. And then in the water, more often than not, property owners admit to me that they don't necessarily leave the shallow water area natural. They maybe get in there with a rake and, rake things around. And that's not great for water quality. Every time we disturb the bottom, we're releasing phosphorus again out of the sediment into the water column, and algae loves that. We may be, obvious to some, but, not everyone knows that, feeding the ducks and the geese and wildlife is not a lake-friendly thing to do. I had recently heard that a Canada goose can produce 2 pounds of waste per day. And that waste is very, very high in bacteria and nutrients. So that's, sometimes there's been a few instances where lakes have had cyanobacteria blooms, and it's determined that it's because the wildfowl population is just really making a mess of things. And I know you guys have had some waterfowl programs to deter the geese from the beach there. And as you guys know, they can be pretty persistent and take a lot of effort. So that's definitely, not feeding them, not having your lawn go right down to the lake. Those are all lake friendly things to help deter geese and wildlife from hanging out and causing water quality problems. And on some of our bigger lakes, a lake-friendly living standard of excellence is if you have a dock, like my parents on Sunapee, and they want to keep ice away from the dock during the winter so the dock doesn't get damaged. People put in what's called bubblers or agitators. Basically just makes air bubbles so that the ice can't form. A lake-friendly living standard of excellence is to only open up as much open water as you need to disconnect the structure from the ice. You don't want to open up huge areas of open water. First of all, that's a safety hazard for people who want to use the lake during the winter, get out there in their snowmobiles or the cross-country skis. It's also really not good for lake ecology because by opening up open water, we're letting in more sunlight into the lake, and then more sunlight raises the water temperature and also lets the plants and algae grow. So really our lakes here in New Hampshire, it's really good for them to have that season of being closed off from the atmosphere and from the sunlight to just have sort of a period of rest. And lake-friendly living standards of excellence, it's how you recreate. We encourage fuel-efficient motors. That's the standard of excellence. If you're going from water body to water body, or if you have guests coming to your lake house and they're launching boats, we aquatic invasive species prevention. So cleaning, draining, and drying off your boat, trailer, and gear to prevent the spread of invasive species. And another standard of excellence example would be if you fish, using lead-free fishing tackle. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with loons in New Hampshire and the work of the Loon Preservation Committee. Their research has shown that lead poisoning is the leading cause of loon mortality in New Hampshire. And these loons are generally getting lead from fishing tackle. So, not using lead-free fishing tackle would be a lake-friendly living standard of excellence. That was a whole lot of talking. Does anyone have any questions on those standards of excellence? All right.
Andrea,
Go ahead, Sue.
one of the issues we have, just to alert, is that a number of us know this, is that some of the houses that are not on the lake have permission to access the lake, which means they have pathways that go down the hill to the lake. Mm-hmm. And there hasn't been much guidance in how to build a healthy pathway. Mm-hmm. And some of them are well done and some of them are not. And we have had several members of one community that's involved with that volunteer to be evaluated in terms of what is a healthy path. Can we reduce 7 paths to 2 paths and join them and whatever? Awesome. So, I know that's one of the things that we want to look at, because we can see they come to a trail at the bottom, which is actually where our sewer line goes through, and a cross-country trail. So we can see the evidence of what comes down the hill.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's probably a major thing. And we hope to get our Youth Conservation Corps involved when this stupid COVID is over, to do a demonstration path that people could use as a guide.
That's awesome.
Path looks like.
That's awesome. And I would think in your community, either probably it doesn't make sense to have a whole bunch of individual paths. If you could come up with some, community pathways to minimize the number of paths, let those other areas where the paths aren't needed, revegetate to a more natural condition. I think that's really a great opportunity. And I please keep us posted. And I do hope that through this program, we can help inspire that type of work. So awesome. All right. And Paul, I just read your comment in the chat box and I like it. So I will keep that in mind. So for the LakeSmart Award, so I mentioned that this is a recognition program. Again, we're hoping to get a bunch of early adopters that are, LakeSmart, with relatively minimal work, and start posting these recognition signs around. Not only do we post the signs around, we work with Lake Association to recognize people in their community who have received the award. Again, this is all about, social marketing, sort of recognizing a good behavior and so that others will want to find out about it. Some property owners are going to achieve LakeSmart status on their very first evaluation. And this is our very first LakeSmart property owner up at Kalalamuk Lake, also not very far from you. She was super excited. It was just, awesome. Not everyone's going to achieve LakeSmart status on the first time, and that's okay. And that's really eventually the population we want to get at, right? Where there are properties where improvements can be made. This picture here, man on the right, excuse me, is on Deering Lake in New Hampshire. And he had us come out a couple times and he worked really hard and eventually received the LakeSmart Award. His buffer, the buffer behind him needs to grow in a little bit more, but he did get awarded for just, continuing at it and making these incremental improvements. And he was just so proud. But we know that no property is ever going to be 100% lake friendly. So all owners, property owners, receive recommendations from us how they can become lake smart or how they can become even more lake smart. And we provide them with links to information where they can learn more. And we also can provide them with connections to professional service providers, whether it's a septic system, a professional, a landscaping professional, where they can get some help. And we're building, and I'm not sure if it's in this slide here, but we're building a team of LakeSmart service providers that, pledge to do their work to the highest standards to help their customers and keep our lakes clean. So we'll provide some information to that. What we have found is, again, as I mentioned earlier, once people know what lake friendly living is, they usually want to take action to become lake friendly and to help protect that lake, that they love, that they've invested along. Again, property owners sometimes need help implementing those recommendations. Sometimes, it's a simple thing as, fix this path, redirect it this way, plant a couple blueberry bushes, but sometimes it's, really big projects. And this is what I was explaining, that we're building this LakeSmart service provider team. We have 13 businesses in our pilot year who have signed on to be LakeSmart service providers, and Belknap Landscape, one of the bigger landscaping companies in the Lakes region, sort of led the way there to help us develop this program and set some standards for it, because we know that not every service provider out there is does their work in a lake friendly way, and we want to be able to promote and recognize those that do. And so on our website here, here's our LakeSmart resource library. And if I didn't mention this before, I will provide this presentation in PDF form to you guys so that you can take a look at it, share it with others, get the links from it. But our resource library has all different things, fact sheets, do-it-yourself information about the different sections, and also down here, sort of that link to our growing network of LakeSmart service providers around the state. So that is a whole bunch of talking. Anyone have any specific questions at this point about LakeSmart? All right. Well,
Andrea, did you see a question from Bob Meyer about whether you're currently doing
oh,
evaluation?
thank you. Hi, Bob. Yes, that's a great question. And thank you, Sue, for pointing that out. Yes. So even because it was amazing, actually, even though we were under COVID last summer, we were able to get our team out starting in July. We ended up visiting 70 properties, socially distanced and masked last summer. And we will start doing property assessments again this year, probably again at the beginning of July. We have a bit of a backlog, but of people to get to, but please do, the first step again is, and I'll show you the link in a minute. The first step is to fill out the self-assessment survey. And if you have filled it out already, you're on our list, but if you haven't filled it out, please do fill it out, and we'll hope to get you on our list very soon to do a visit. And that link will be showing up.
I can just
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a question. So I don't know. I thought I did the self-assessment survey,
Okay.
maybe not.
Okay.
A way to go check whether we're on the list.
Yeah, I can get back to you later. I can get back to you tomorrow and let you know if you're on our list. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for checking.
Yeah, because if I'm not, we'll certainly do it. We like to put ourselves on.
Awesome. Cool.
I know I looked at the questionnaire.
Yeah.
I don't know if I actually filled it all out.
I would say if you haven't filled it out, that's okay, because a nicer version is coming out in a few weeks. But I will check and get back to you tomorrow.
So if I can ask another question while
Of course.
I managed to get the floor. At one point, there was, I believe, an idea of trying to train some of our local volunteers to do this. Sue Pratt knows. Sue is chair of Lakes and Streams. I'm chair of Sustainable Eastman. And between the two of us, we were trying to put together a group of volunteers who would be interested in getting that training. What is the status of that right now?
Yeah, great question. That is definitely our long-term goal with your community, because you guys are so awesome at volunteerism and you have such a talented group there. I was had to explain, unfortunately, let Sue know earlier this spring that we experienced an unanticipated staffing change this spring, which has set us behind in being able to train local groups. So we won't be able to train, specifically train your group this summer to adopt the program, but that would absolutely be our plan for next summer. But with that said, I anticipate that my team is going to be visiting your community at some point this summer. We would certainly, as long as it's okay with the property owner, invite anyone from your team along so they can start getting a glimpse of and a better idea about the program.
Okay, so kind of as a tutoring,
like a shadowing, until we really have a much better. Our training program right now, it needed some work, and we knew that, and we were going to do that this spring, and then all of a sudden we had staffing changes I had to figure out, so we're a little bit behind.
So what can we do to communicate with you to let you know that if you're coming to a property owner here in Eastman, that either you or we could contact the property owner and say, when your team is there, would you also mind a couple of Eastman volunteers watching over just to learn stuff?
Sure. By us having this conversation, I've written it down, and I'll be reaching out to my conservation program manager to let her know that that's how we're going to operate this summer. So, and I can let
are the ones probably to contact on that.
Okay. That was my next question. So we will reach out to you and Sue when we know that we'll be coming by.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right.
We're going to try to get a group of volunteers together.
Great. Thank you for closing the loop on that. And I apologize. I'm sorry we can't provide a full fleshed out training program this summer, but you're absolutely at the top of our list.
Good.
All right. So we are a rapidly growing community of people, your group, New Hampshire Lakes, all of our partners, you're here tonight because you know that we need to do more for our lakes. And I can't wait to be able to go to an association meeting like this and talk in the free, fresh air. I have a few on my calendar this summer. I'm very much looking forward to it. And I do hope, and we've already sort of made plans where we can help start making lake-friendly living the norm in Eastman and beyond. And I just love this picture. What a beautiful spot of the world here.
Mhm.
So I encourage you, if you haven't already, in a week or two from now, take our property, our property owner self-assessment 2.0, and that'll be posted on our website. And I will check to see, Robert, if you have already taken it. So I've taken a little bit more than an hour of your time, but you guys have been awesome. And I always enjoy speaking with you guys. You do a lot of good work up there, and I know you're hard workers, and it's just, we've had some great partnerships over the years. Does anyone have any more questions about this or anything lake related?
You said you would provide the PDF of this presentation?
Absolutely.
You're going to send it to Mary or to Sue or?
Yeah, I'll definitely send it to Mary. And then I know I have Sue's email, and I don't know, Robert, if I have your email, but I bet I can.
Probably not, but
I can send it if you want.
provide it to
Okay.
you.
Okay, perfect.
And if you provide the PDF to Mary or Sue, they'll send it to me.
Okay, so you'll get it your way. Perfect.
That's great. Thank you
And-
very much.
And you
Great
guys,
presentation.
and you guys can share the PDF, post it, whatever, in whatever way you want. So,
Yeah, good.
Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, so
Oh,
it
thank
was
you.
very nice of you to do this program for us. So
well, this is actually the part of my job I really like the most is, I would like it more if we were in person, but I just really like meeting with, the people that really live around the lake and what you guys are really seeing and helping to inspire you and give you the tools to make a difference. So awesome.
We're all ready to get back in person.
Yes.
Well, very good. It's still a beautiful night out there. I will have a few action items to get this to you to look and see if Robert's on our list. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrea.
thanks again, Andrea. Good night.
You're welcome. Good night. See you guys later.